All right.
Positives with Carlos. It's also like, oh, he played at Hofstra for what, 3 years?
Yeah.
Senior season here. But what we also know is that you can play anywhere and go up a level. And, some guys, it doesn't work for them. Some guys, it does. And he theoretically here, has been given the keys to this offense. I think anybody who has watched this team play in the exhibitions, has heard the buzz around this team, believes that he is the point guard. And when I think of college basketball, I think of point guard play, and you need a true point guard. And J.J. Starling is a guy who we will talk about, and I love J.J. Not a true point guard, not his position. And when Judah left, it's like, oh, who will be the point guard? It's not going to be Kyle Cuff. That's for sure.
Yeah.
No offense to Kyle Cuff. I like some of his game, not all of it. But Carlos, I think in theory right now, what he can do, what he can provide for this team is something that I am abundantly excited for. And yes, I have my hesitations because he comes from Hofstra, but I think the ceiling, like you were mentioning, is a very fair thing to say.
Talent translates, though, in college basketball now more than ever, I think is the thing. The playing field is starting to level. You're seeing 16s beat 1s. Like, this is something that it has become a reality that you can take someone from a smaller mid-major and turn them into a star or have them be a star on your Power 5 team. And that's what Syracuse can totally do. But I think the thing with Carlos that makes him even better than all of that, you're not looking for the scoring to translate because that's the hardest part of the game. Sure, sometimes you get a scorer that gets 21 points per game at a very small, mid-major, lower-level D1 team, and then they can't translate that when they move up the ladder. But defense, that can translate. It's more effort and hustle than anything. Assists and passing, that can also translate. That's not what I'm worried about, and that makes me feel so good, is that we're not reliant on the top transfer on this team to score.
Yeah.
The other options will score. Chris Bell and J.J. Starling will. That makes it so much better, and that takes the idea that, okay, he comes from Hofstra, he comes from a smaller school. That eliminates that.
The potential, you said the word biggest transfer. Now, the biggest transfer, they call him what, the biggest, Eddie Lampkin.
Size-wise.
We're going to get back to Carlos in a little bit, but we got to go through, hit some of these other transfers. Eddie Lampkin, like I mentioned, spent his first 3 years at TCU, was all right there. Had a pretty nice March Madness moment against Arizona a few years ago. Goes to Colorado last year, and we'll talk about maybe some of the reason why he left TCU, but that gets a little complicated. He goes to Colorado last year. From a stats perspective, best year of his career. Had 3 pretty good games in the NCAA tournament. I have a complicated thought process with Eddie Lampkin, but
do tell.
But we're going to call this a tease. Before we get to that, we have Mike Waters on the beat for Syracuse for a long time. I've seen a lot of guys come in and out of the program. Mike Waters discussed the role that he believes Eddie Lampkin will have on this Syracuse team.
Some teams are going to need the help on Eddie. He gets the ball down low, he's going to get double-teamed. I've talked to a whole bunch of people who went up against Eddie in past years. It's his passing ability they feared most.
So the passing is definitely a positive.
I love that. I love that he mentions the passing because that is, Austin, the biggest positive in my opinion.
The biggest.
The biggest because it opens up the offense even more.
Sure. I would say that's the second biggest. I think his ability to create shots for himself down low with his body, positioning, and angles is something I'm looking forward to.
That is true. But if you can have him on multiple levels, like we're talking about, I think the best part of his game is passing. You think it's the ability to create space in the paint and use that bigger body. That's why it works just so well. If you ever see him get the ball at the top of the key, hold it over his head, look for the offense to start, you didn't have that last year with any of your bigs. None of them could pass from the top of the key or create anything. That way, the pick and pop game or the pick and roll game, there's no threat to it because if he continues to hold his dribble, where's he going to go with the ball if he's not a good passer? Because he's got such good court vision, that opens up more lanes for your shooters and Chris Bell, your cutters and J.J. Starling. If you need him late in a possession, you can have Starling in that way. The offense is so much more open now. That's why I love it.
You have a point guard in Jaquan Carlos. You have a big man in Eddie Lampkin. You have Adrian Autry in his second year. He has more of his kind of guys in the program. If you agree that Autry has more of his guys that he brought in, give us a call, 315-443-2011. Interact with us on social media as well, WAER Sports on Twitter, WAER Sports Talk, I should say, on Twitter and also on YouTube. The Lampkin thing, I want to get through some of my Lampkin stuff.
Yeah.
Initially, so I have like an initial when he signed here. that I have the last several months, and then the last few days I've warmed up to him some more.
Give me your timeline here.
So initially I was like, oh, wow, this is great. A true center, a guy who could score, a guy, like you said, who can pass. Mm-hmm. Syracuse hasn't really had that much recently, just like you mentioned. You could argue maybe Jesse Edwards, maybe. But a lot of his productivity was reliant on guards, giving him lobs and just finishing on the rim, stuff like that.
Exactly.
And I really liked Edwards' game. So like, oh, this is great. Plus, real March Madness pedigree.
Yeah.
Great stuff there. Then, he takes it out of the bio, and then it's like a whole thing to get him back here. And at some points this offseason, I was like, can I take him seriously?
And you mean by that he took Syracuse men's basketball out of his Instagram bio?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And it was a whole deal to get him back, recommitted to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. Then, I have all these questions. Is it a red flag that this is his third school? Now, if you go through some more, there's real reasons why he left TCU, and he left Colorado because all the good players left.
Yeah,
and he wanted a good chance to get to the tournament. He said that. I go, physical fitness, stamina, is that legit?
I mean, look at DJ Burns.
Right. Is he potentially too invested in off-the-court activities? Right? Does he have too much other stuff going on? Is he trying to build a brand too much? Right?
That's fair.
Right? And these are questions that you can actually ask yourself in the year 2024, in the era that we live in.
Yeah.
But I land somewhere in the middle of all that. Mm-hmm. I have warmed up to him some more, and I like to believe that he can be a better version. The better version of him is something I believe is more realistic than the bottom version where he can become a distraction, this and that. Maybe a guy like Davis is playing more small ball than him. But I think that Lampkin overall can provide more of an upside than my summer months thinking was.
I just can't wait to see him during the regular season. That's all I'll say, because I know the distractions in the offseason can be a bit much, but once he gets rolling, once he gets into it, I think Lampkin and the combination of him and Carlos will rejuvenize this team and make them an actual complete basketball team and not just, hey, give it to Judah and see if he can get
Yes. And that is a lot of good stuff. And there's other stuff with Lampkin about his demeanor in high school that I like a lot too, reading about him earlier. So there's a lot of levels, a lot of layers to unpack with Eddie Lampkin that we will talk about over the course of this season. Now, let's get to the freshmen.
Yeah.
Donnie Freeman and Chapa Moore. Donnie Freeman, the highest ranked Syracuse recruit since Carmelo Anthony, who of course
doesn't that just sound great this year?
Led the Orange to their first and only national title so far in the 02-03 season. A freshman being the best player on a national championship team. Something that you rarely see. Anthony Davis 2012 comes to mind. Jahlil Okafor, I guess 2015 comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But Melo as a wing to do that is special, special stuff. Now, Donnie Freeman is not Carmelo Anthony.
No.
But you know what else he's not? This is going to come across as a diss, a stray. Mm-hmm. He's also not Benny Williams.
Well,
he's also a lot better than Benny Williams. And when I think of Donnie, I had a lot of reservations initially because as someone who was here when it was Benny's first year and how highly touted he was.
Mm-hmm. 4-star recruit.
4-star. Some would say 5-star depending on what sites you look at. And the way that Benny's career played out, it was disappointing.
Yeah.
And so just like life, if you get your hopes up for one thing in life and it doesn't work out, what happens? You get an extra guard up for when a similar thing comes around.
Yeah.
So I had an extra guard up. Oh, man, is Donnie actually going to be the guy?
Yeah.
I just saw this play with Benny. What's going to happen? I don't want to be hurt again, Hudson. I don't want to be hurt again.
I want my heart to be open. I don't want to be afraid to feel.
But there's too much good stuff with Donnie Freeman. I'm all the way in on Donnie.
You know what? And I fully agree with you because you can't even make the comparison with him and Williams because his game is just so different. He's so talented. He's a 3-level scorer. He gets to the hoop. And I heard Eric Devendorf the other day say something that I thought was very interesting. And you'll notice this when you listen to Syracuse basketball games this year on WAER, is the fact that Donnie Freeman, his points come quietly. That's what we like. Benny Williams, when he had a bucket, it was like, oh, wow, that's interesting.
Thunderous two-hand dunk.
Exactly. Donnie Freeman has the mid-range jumper, which is falling out. But, still, the mid-range jumper, the game comes to him. He has a good understanding of space, three-point range, still has that athleticism. And he just is a hard worker, it seems. This is a guy that Autry brought in as one of his guys, his first full recruiting cycle. This is one of Autry's guys. And the fact that, he knows he's not coming here for Jim Boeheim like some of the other guys. He's ready to come here, be his own brand, be his own guy. And I think Donnie Freeman, I think he might be the team's leading scorer at the end of the year, and I don't think that's crazy to say.
You really think so?
I think they're going to lean on him even more as the season goes along and as they get more adjusted. I don't know how I feel about J.J. Starling in terms of the score first role. I think Donnie Freeman will be the leading scorer on this team, on a very good Syracuse team as a freshman. I truly, in my heart, believe, and in my head, it's not just my heart, like you said, I don't want to be afraid to feel. That is what I feel. But when you look
Never
at
apologize
how complete and how fluid, that's the way I'd describe it. How fluid Donnie Freeman's game is at all three levels, it can be hard not to think how he wouldn't be.
Hudson is unafraid to talk about his feelings for Donnie Freeman. Do you have the courage to do the same at home? Let us know. Call in 315-443-2011. Give us a little, hit us up on the text line, 315-556-3929. Watch us as well on YouTube, WAER Sports Talk. Man, you're in your feels for Freeman. I love that.
I sure am, but it's not just Freeman. It's not just Freeman.
It's Choppa Moore.
The
other freshman at some sites have him as a top 80, maybe top 60 guy. Now, the deal with Choppa Moore, folks, if you are not familiar, this is what we're giving you this preview. Elite shooter, right? That is a thing to know about him. And he's got the tattoo of the bullseye on his left elbow. That has become his go-to celebration that kids around the country are apparently doing these days because of his social media presence
it's TikTok
last
famous.
year. Right. If you look at his numbers, he shot 34% from beyond the arc last year. 34%, which is fine.
But he's more than that.
But if you look at how he shoots the basketball, it is pure, it is good, it is a shot that I believe in, and a shot that I think a lot of Syracuse fans should believe in.
Exactly. I don't think I'd be worried about his numbers that he put up last year in high school, and the reason being is because he was relied on to be that main scorer because he was so much better than everybody. And I wouldn't especially not worry about that this year because he's not going to be that ball-dominant guard. They're not going to need him to do that. You know what they need him to do? Get open, find space, and shoot threes.
Just stand around and have Carlos and Lampkin and Freeman passing the ball.
And that's what we talked about. The offense is so much more open that he doesn't have to be a guy that has to create his own shot. He will have the shots created for him by one of the best passers statistically in college basketball last year in Jaquan Carlos. If you have guys around you like that, Choppa Moore is going to thrive. Sure, Donnie Freeman may be a one and done, and he's gone. And I don't think Choppa Moore is going to be that guy. I think he's going to need a little bit more time. But boy, what he can develop into is special. And if you look at, obviously, it's stats that you don't really pay a whole lot of attention to because it's, exhibition games and exhibition shooting. But if you look at how well Syracuse did in shooting against Clarion and Slippery Rock, they were excellent. They shot over 50% or just under 50% against Slippery Rock because they were getting open looks. They attempted 31 threes in that game and 34 the game before. You know how many they attempted a game last year?
How many?
20. They are opening
Autry
things.
ball, baby. It's different.
Ball. This is a new era, and these freshmen are ushering in something that Syracuse has not seen before, a more modern game. The cobwebs of Jim Boeheim have been shaken off.
There's a lot to go off of right there. I will say one thing. I love that we're in the spirited basketball conversation. Basketball is the most beautiful sport, in my opinion, because it's 5 players playing with each other and just knowing where each other are. And the offense that we are describing right now is beautiful.
That's basketball.
But at the same time, it's Clarion and Slippery Rock that we just saw.
I know.
It's so easy to shoot when there's an empty dome against Slippery Rock. You're not playing at Clemson on a midday week, and Ian Shefflin and Chase Hunter are flying around, and that place is going nuts.
That is true. But I like the fact that they're attempting more. This is a new team. It's a new brand.
Yes.
And again,
systemically, this is different.
Exactly, because of the teams, you've seen in the past, we've had, this team has had great shooters come through. It's not what I'm saying. But if you look at systemically what this team is, it never had adjusted to that three-point era until now. And that was, during the entire coaching tutelage of Jim Boeheim. Well, when he took over the program, the three-point line wasn't a thing anywhere. It was just a dream in somebody's head to put it in the ABA. So at this point, we have never seen a team with likely the makeup of this and what they are going to kind of game plan, it seems like, from what you can take from these first two games. So no, it's not the performance that I care about, but it's the difference in the game. There was a point in that game where they had shot, I think it was triple or quadruple. It was very early in the game, but quadruple the amount of threes that they did twos at a certain point. They were just letting it fly, and that is the modern game.
All right. Before we wrap up this early segment, we do have to talk a little bit about the guys who left. 8 guys in total left. We don't need to talk about the Peter Carey's of the world. I'm sure he's having a great time with former Syracuse player and assistant coach Jerry McNamara at Siena. But Judah Mintz, Malik Brown, we touched on Benny Williams and Quadir Copeland. Judah, Malik, Quadir, definitely the 3 biggest departures. Judah scored a lot. The guy to score the basketball. A lot of shots, as you mentioned, a lot of trips to the free throw line. It was basically him and Zach Edey last year. And human nature, I played basketball my whole life. I'm not saying I'm playing D1 basketball, but what I do know is that when you have one guy taking so many shots, tunnel vision at times, and just drawing fouls and going to the foul line, that is not a guy that you necessarily want to play with.
No.
It's a guy that you just do a lot of watching, not a lot of doing.
And this is going to sound crazy here. Just bear with me, because obviously Judah was the leader of this team. But if you talk about the 3 most impactful transfers in Malik, Quadir, and Judah, Judah going to the NBA.
Right.
But, or going to
Departures,
the NBA.
yes.
Departures. Judah is the 3rd most impactful of the 3
Whoa,
for the future of this program.
Whoa!
It's just true. It's just true. You need a better play style if you're ever
Still,
going to make the tournament. It wasn't going to be with him. It couldn't be with him. But with Malik Brown, it could have been with Malik Brown. He's getting minutes at Duke. That's how good he is. Malik Brown was
You don't
tremendous.
need to talk to me about how good Malik Brown is.
I loved Malik Brown.
I love Malik Brown.
That was my guy. I loved Malik Brown. I loved the future. I loved the future of Quadir Copeland in my head, and this team was going to be so good. Once Judah is gone and he's not attempting 13 free throws a game and finding weird ways to get to the line, and that's the whole offense. I loved the fact that wasn't the case. So Judah, push him out of the brain. I hope the best for him. I hope he does great in the G League, the G League,
something like that.
Greece, wherever. I hope he does great. But Malik and Quadir were so much more impactful. I'm just glad they at least replaced what Quadir could have been for this team with Jaquan Carlos.
So, a lot to go off of there again. I like a lot of your... I will say, Judah deserves credit for being the leading scorer in an ACC basketball team.
Oh, yeah, I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
I think he's good at basketball.
Right. So, Malik Brown plays the game of basketball the way that I would want to teach my future son how to play the game of basketball.
I love that.
I have always loved Malik Brown.
High motor.
If Malik Brown did not transfer, I would have this team firmly as an NCAA tournament team. We can talk about that in a little bit too. Quadir leaving was tough. That was tough. But the Malik departure, especially to Duke, really hurt me. We'll talk about that some more. But it's tough. You lose those 3 guys, and losing Malik Brown and Quadir Copeland, and even still feeling this optimistic about the team, I think speaks to how Autry designed his offseason. It speaks to the guys that he brought in. The fact that you lost those guys that a lot of Syracuse fans, like the Q level, was that what you do? For approval rating, the Q level? Okay. The approval rating of Syracuse fans, if you were asked Syracuse fans last year, who are your 2 favorite guys on the team? I think a lot of people would say Malik Brown and Quadir Copeland.
Fully.
Yeah, it just is what it is. All right. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to discuss this team's schedule, their tournament hopes, and all that stuff. Sports Night, the basketball preview show, continues right here on WAER in a little bit.
Sloan was impressed that the insane clown posse had endorsed Kamala Harris.
Because I
Like, things are getting crazy when Shaggy 2 Dope is out here calling for a saner clown posse.
I'm Peter Sagal. If you're worn out by election news, we'll wear you out with news about everything else, along with special guest Brian Jordan Alvarez on this week's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me from NPR.
Saturday morning at 11 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Hi, this is David Gans, host of the Grateful Dead Hour, the weekly audio postcard from the wide musical world of America's best-loved band. Join me for the Grateful Dead Hour Saturday afternoons at 5 on WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, it's all empty and I don't care. So my baby down by the river.
Delve into the rich tapestry of acoustic-led folk, roots, and Americana music as we welcome back Common Threads here on 88.3 FM WAER. Enjoy national and international acts as well as local artists every Sunday with host Pete Thomas. Whether you are seeking the comfort of timeless classics or contemporary gems and music discovery, don't miss Common Threads Sundays from 2 to 5 exclusively on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station.
Welcome back into Sports Night here at WAER, the basketball preview show for this year alongside Austin Barrick. I'm Hudson Ridley. We took you through the landscape of what this team looks like. We had a lot of passionate opinions on this roster fill-up, but now it's time to focus on the schedule. You can pull it up on your phone at Cuse.com, scroll wherever you are and find it. To call in and tell us the matchups you're looking for at 315-443-2011. And if you don't feel like that, just text us at 315-556-3929. But Austin, this is a schedule that looks a little bit strange. There are some interesting games on here, to put it lightly, against teams that, you haven't seen Syracuse play ever, or at least in a while. And so I don't really know how to feel about some of the ups and downs of the non-con, but starting with the Empire Classic, the little tournament that Syracuse will play. I don't want to peruse over, Lemoyne and Colgate, of course, because those could be trap games for Syracuse. But if you
Lemoyne won't be.
Who knows? Who knows? They shoot a lot of threes. Yeah. Teams like that get hot. But, if you look at matchups like that and peruse over them to get to the big ones, number 19 Texas.
Yeah.
In the mix.
Yes. So Syracuse is going to the Barclays Center 2 different times. November here for this Texas game, and then either the winner or loser of Texas Tech and St. Joe's, and then they're going to play Maryland there on December 21st. Texas is probably going to be a loss. Texas is good. They always find talent.
Yeah.
They don't have Tyrese Hunter anymore. He's off to Memphis. They do have a kid named Trey Johnson, a nice guard there, who's a freshman, I believe.
Very talented.
And so Texas is a game that and also it could be a Donnie Freeman, quote-unquote, revenge game, because Freeman initially wanted to go to Texas, and then the Chris Beard allegations came out, and then Freeman no longer wanted to go to Texas. He had Maryland, Georgetown, and I think Virginia Tech as other offers he had, but that'll be a narrative for that game. But then I believe that Texas Tech, St. Joe's, Syracuse I project to lose a Texas game, and so the Orange will probably play St. Joe's. That, to me, would be a win. You got to split. You got to come away with one win there. You absolutely have to.
You do.
But if Syracuse is a legit team, you either beat Texas or Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Because in years past, you do these tournaments, Villanova, MSG, blown out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was going through this the other week. Like, when they play the big boys, they get killed. When they went to Illinois, 30-point loss there.
That was
in the 2022-23 season. They get killed by Duke, and we're going to talk about Duke later. But last year, Maui, you hang around with Tennessee, but that ultimately get blown out. Get blown out by Gonzaga. Like, when they are on paper overmatched, they actually normally get overmatched, and that's a bad sign.
It's a bad sign
historically,
in
but
a way.
this team is different.
Yeah, this team is different. I mean, it's just a complete different roster makeup. So I'm not taking anything that I saw last year and putting it into this. Obviously, the landscape of college basketball, you can never do that in general, but
right.
I still think Texas is a team that has so much talent, so much athleticism, so much speed, the best players in the country. Like, this is something that, an old Syracuse team wouldn't back down from, but this year, I still don't think we're at the point where you can see them taking it to Texas and beating Texas. Now, that being said, I think this is kind of the jump that they're making where they can keep it close, and these will no longer be blowouts. Some of these bigger games, like Texas, are down the line with number 12 in the preseason poll, Tennessee. Like, these are two big games for them. They're two biggest in terms of the stature of the opponent outside of the ACC, so they're two biggest in the non-con. I don't see blowouts in either. But I do see losses.
I see a high chance that Syracuse gets blown out by Tennessee.
Really? Too much speed, you think? That's
you're in Knoxville on a Tuesday night. Like, you're not winning. Like, that's a game. Like, it just reminds me of Illinois 2 years ago. It was the Big Ten ACC Challenge 2 years ago. Now it's the SEC ACC Challenge.
Ugh.
Like, it's just, you played Tennessee last year in Maui, and somehow the scheduling gods were like, all right, let's have these two teams play each other again. In that place, like, these teams are so good at home. Like, Tennessee's not losing at home to Syracuse.
No, I don't think at all.
I'm not saying there's like a defer, like they have to tip the ball up, and like obviously like Syracuse could win that game. But in my head, just knowing how college basketball works, Syracuse would have to play nearly a perfect game to beat Tennessee on the road.
Yeah, which is something that, from previous Syracuse teams over the last few years, we didn't see a lot of. But, I think there still is a chance that there won't be a blowout. If you think we're crazy, call in and tell us, 315-443-2011, or text us, 315-556-3929. When you look at that Tennessee game, that is really where the schedule starts to, at least in the non-con, it reaches a fever pitch there, and then it kind of slowly slides down into Georgetown, which, boy, we don't even know at this point what Georgetown is good. Malik Mack looks good.
Right, the Harvard
transfer point guard, like that could be the really only
There's
hang-up
Ed
I'd
Cooley
have.
rumblings with, like, is he going to take the Virginia job?
That was fake.
Crazy. Oh,
that was fake.
Okay, but the reason why I say that is because I don't know if Cooley has really established what he's got going on there yet. Ed
Cooley is a weird case. Ed Cooley, I don't think is comparable to any coach right now in college basketball in terms of what's going on around him and just how strange it is in general. But I think Georgetown as a whole is still as of right now where the table stands, a lesser program and a lesser roster.
Yeah.
And not something that really should concern. Obviously, you still have to beat them, and if you lose to them, then oh my goodness.
It's a rivalry game. It'll be the 100th matchup of Syracuse and Georgetown.
Yes.
That will be a big game in the Dome. Usually they kind of flip back and forth. It's tough to win at the other team's place. Last year, the Orange took a tangible step forward and won at Georgetown. We remember the Quadir dunk, the Quadir Copeland dunk. Mm-hmm. That was incredible, and the second half surge that the Orange had, and like going through it from last year of Boeheim, the 16-17 record, to then, that was the second to last year. The last year of Boeheim was like a one game above 500 record. First year under Autry, last year you get to 20 wins for the first time since 2018-2019. Last year you actually took tangible steps forward, such as beating Colgate.
Yeah.
Something that you actually did not do in the last 2 years of Boeheim.
It's a good Raiders team.
Boeheim lost to Colgate twice and was like, all right, I've had enough.
Those guys are playing in, I'm not even kidding, Sweden and Austria, their best players. Look, those are, it's a big step forward.
So Colgate's a team to be taken seriously these days. You beat Oregon by 20 points, a Shelvin Oregon team last year. But the point is, Syracuse has been taking steps forward, and so I do believe that these non-con games will be more competitive than they were in years past. The Maryland game, I believe, is a firm toss-up game. Maryland has a couple of really good freshmen. Let's see, Julian Reese and Queen, who I believe, if I pull this up here, Derek Queen. So they have a couple of forward centers, Maryland does. Maryland, a program that I have a lot of respect for, a program that won the national title the year before Syracuse did in 2002, a program that truly belongs in the ACC. That's going to be an awesome game. Should be an awesome game. Noon tip, December 21st, when you're probably at home. Oh, bowl season's around the corner. Christmas is coming up. Let's turn on Maryland, Syracuse. this is, like, you're right. I'm glad the way you described that, where once you get through Tennessee, the schedule kind of eases up.
Exactly, and that's the point where you really make your mark. Now, obviously, if you're Syracuse, you want your mark to be made in that Texas or Tennessee game, but how realistic is that really? If you keep it close, if you have, if it's down to the wire against both or either of those teams, that's a statement that you're at least back in the mix if you're Syracuse. And that, if you're a Syracuse fan, has to be the best thing to see other than a win. But Maryland, that is where, that's where the rubber meets the road. Is this team better than some of the fairly good teams elsewhere in other conferences? And my bet is yes. My bet is fully yes on this team because of how much more diverse they are in terms of scoring options. I just think the non-con, it's a tough slate in terms of who you're playing and some of the even sneakier teams like Colgate every year, but this is a team that is much more well-equipped to deal with it, much more equipped to play in the modern game, and now that Autry finally has his guys, I wouldn't expect to see the same non-conference results we've seen in years past, which could elevate them to, a 22-win, little bit over the bubble team, perhaps.
I like that you mentioned 22 wins. I'm going to do this right now. Folks at home, pay attention to what I'm about to do. The other day I went through the schedule, and I put a win, loss, or toss-up to all 31 regular season games. Last year, Syracuse was 20-12 and missed the NCAA tournament. We're not really considered a bubble team. 22 is where you start to really get considered to be bubble team, maybe 9, 10, 11 seed. So these are my confirmed, on paper, you should win games. We'll buzz through these. Lemoyne, Colgate, Youngstown State, St. Joe's is what that projected to be.
You would imagine.
Cornell, UAlbany, Georgetown, Bucknell, Florida State on the road, Georgia Tech at home, BC twice. You should sweep BC.
Yeah.
They are bad this year. They lost everybody. Louisville at home, even though it's a retooled Louisville team. Home to Notre Dame, home to Pitt, Stanford and Cal on the road. Yes, it's road trip out there, but on paper, those are not very good teams. NC State at home and Virginia at home with Tony Bennett stepping aside right before the season. So those are my 19 you should win these games.
I like how that sounds.
The 6 losses I have, I would be quite surprised if Syracuse won these games. Texas, like we mentioned. Tennessee, like we mentioned. At Clemson, I think that's a really tough place to play.
Yep.
Those guys get fired up. Duke.
Yeah.
Miami, and then at Pitt. I just think Syracuse, at Miami is tough and at Pitt is tough, especially after beating them at their place last year.
The one place we differ, I think Miami should be a win.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't like how untooled the Miami roster is. I don't think they've really gotten much better after being a team last year that was in the pits of the ACC. That's a team you should beat.
I have a lot of respect for Coach Larinaga. I think he can figure it out. But yeah, that is they lost Norchad Omier. He's off to Baylor with Jeremy Roach, of all players there.
That's true.
It's the new landscape of college basketball, folks.
So if you were going to give the toss-up games, how many does that leave?
So that leaves 6 toss-up games.
Okay.
At Notre Dame to start ACC play.
Ooh.
The Maryland game that we just discussed.
Yes.
Wake Forest, New Year's Eve. A Wake Forest team that is projected to finish 3rd. Folks, they have continuity, and someone has to finish 3rd other than Duke and Carolina.
It's true.
UNC at home, I believe, is a true toss-up game. Obviously, Syracuse beat them last year.
I agree.
The most notable win of the season. Virginia Tech on the road and SMU on the road. Those are my
SMU.
6 toss-up games. SMU has Boopy Miller, transfer from Wake Forest.
They do
Wake
have
Forest
Boopy
beat
Miller, yes.
Syracuse by 30 last year on February 3rd. First home game for them in 2 weeks. But SMU is supposed to be better than Cal and Stanford on paper if you look at the new ACC teams. So those are my 6 toss-up games. If Syracuse, with the 19 wins, and if you look at those 6 toss-up, if they can go 3-3, that gets you to your 22 number.
Give me game by game here, real quick.
Okay.
Of your toss-ups.
The toss-ups. So you want me to address a win or a loss for these toss-ups?
Give me the game, and I'll address a win or a loss.
Okay, yes, I like this.
Yes.
At Notre Dame, open up ACC play.
If you're a real team, win. I think this is a real team, win.
I like that out of you. Versus Maryland.
I'll take that as a... Give me a win. Give me a win.
All right, so Syracuse at 21
wins, yes.
And if you think at Miami's win, then you think it's 23.
22.
Wake Forest at home.
Loss.
New Year's Eve. Okay.
Mhm.
North Carolina at home.
Loss
Probably
in
a
close
loss.
one. Loss in a close one.
Saturday game, folks.
Yes.
Virginia Tech on the road.
Loss.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a shell of a team right now.
Tough place to play.
Sure. I'll give you
There's
that.
your off game.
And SMU. At SMU, March 4th. Second to last regular season game.
Sneaky loss. Tired team.
Wow. So you out of those 6 toss-ups, you're only giving them 2 wins. 2 and 4.
I think SMU I'm going back and forth on. You know what? No, SMU give me a win.
Okay.
I think SMU, they'll be fine. So that puts me at 23 wins, a 23-win team, and which is what I have them as, 22 or 23. So, Austin, where do you see this team? When you look at the entire schedule, your spreadsheets, your mathematical brain, you've put together the algorithms, the formulas, what did they spit out?
Though the spreadsheet takes the preseason off, it doesn't awaken until right before March Madness. I have this team going, I think I have this team winning 23 games.
Okay.
And that includes the ACC tournament, where I think that they will win 1 game, and then probably bow out to probably one of those Duke, Carolina, Wake Forest, or Clemson teams.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you circle back and you think about that conference slate, we broke down the non-con, but in terms of that conference slate, what do you have the conference record being? Because you did win-loss by that.
Oh, boy. I'd have to calculate that, but just going off of, second to last year under Boeheim, they went 9-11 in the ACC. Last year under Boeheim, they went 10-10. Last year under Autry, they went 11-9. So they have 1 game improvement year after year. 12-8. 12-8 is reasonable.
I think 12-8 is
Plus,
fairly
you
reasonable.
get Duke and Carolina at home. You don't have to go to their place. So those games are more that's significant. The likelihood of beating Duke or Carolina at home, you only play those guys once. Those are by far the 2 best teams. At home, you're much more likely to pluck off an upset at home than you are on the road.
A weaker Syracuse team, I guess, in theory, last year beat a tougher North Carolina team in theory last year. So,
right,
it's
exactly.
tough to say that history would repeat itself. But in that case, I think it is a pretty solid chance that they do knock off North Carolina in that spot. North Carolina also might be getting a little bit too much hype when you look at the ACC slate. Just a little bit. So with the amount of wins that they have, where is this team, I guess, in your mind, where are they seated in this area?
So
10 around there?
Well, the first part is, do they make the NCAA tournament?
Well, that's true. In terms of your model, I figure they would. Are they not going to?
I can see this team being a 10 seed.
Okay.
They're going to be in that 7-10. They're going to play probably like a middle-of-the-pack, SEC, Big 12 team. And, right now, we're really living the world of hypotheticals, but why not? This is before the season has officially tipped off. We're allowed to have hope. We're allowed to have dreams. We're allowed to think about things.
That is true.
Before reality strikes.
That is true. And then a big part of that, too, though, to getting to that 10 seed is beating the people in your ACC division, in your conference. That is the most important part. And we had Mike Waters talk about that again.
I think the ACC schedule will give them ample opportunity to, maybe make up a little ground or, get a few more wins there. I think the ACC will be better than it's been the past few years. So maybe there's a few more chances there to get a quad 1 win or 2.
A better ACC, a couple more chances to get that quad 1, quad 2 win. Mike might be right on that. But then it comes to the rubber meeting the road. Very, very interesting season upcoming for Syracuse men's basketball. A whole lot of parts in play, and you can hear it all season long here on WAER for every single game of the year, and possibly even a little bit of extra basketball once it comes time for March. For the first time in 4 years would be the case if they did make it. Though, Austin, there is another team on the Hill who doesn't have to make that claim. They've been in the NCAA tournament fairly recently.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about them on the other side. It's Syracuse women's basketball and Felicia Leggett. Jack, what's not to love about them? We'll be back in just a moment with more of your basketball preview show on WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
We jazz like that, we freak like that, we zoom like that, we out.
After getting big with this song in their first album in 1993, Diggable Planets pushed back against the alternative hip-hop label with their second album, The Rougher-Edged Blowout Comb. On a New Culture Corner, correspondent John Morrison talks about that album 30 years later. That's on the next World Cafe.
Saturday afternoon at 1 on WAER.
On last week's Wait Wait, Dulce Sloan was impressed that the insane clown posse had endorsed Kamala Harris.
Because, things are getting crazy when Shaggy 2 Dope is out here calling for a saner clown posse.
I'm Peter Sagal. If you're worn out by election news, we'll wear you out with news about everything else, along with special guest Brian Jordan Alvarez on this week's Wait Wait Don't Tell Me from NPR.
Saturday morning at 11 on 88.3 FM WAER.
The basketball preview show on SportsNite here on WAER is coming to a close.
Aww.
8 to 9 is the hour we're allotted here. Austin Barrick here with Hudson Ridley. We just spent 45 minutes dissecting the men's basketball team. Hudson, honestly, we could talk another hour or so if we wanted to.
Oh, my goodness. I was in love with talking about this team, and I cannot wait for this.
There are points during our discussions where I feel like we were really on the same wavelength.
We genuinely were.
Let's see if we will be on the same wavelength with the Syracuse women's basketball team, who had a very successful year last year, went to the round of 32. They were a 6 seed. They beat Arizona State in the round of 64 and made UConn sweat it out, a UConn team that reached the Final Four. FLJ, Coach Felicia Leggett-Jack, that is building something in Syracuse. Do you believe that this year's new-look roster will, make it a harder coaching job for her, especially without Deasia Fair, averaging 22 points per game this year? Let us know. Call in 315-443-2011. The discussion around this team starts with Deasia Fair and more about the fact that she's no longer here.
Exactly.
Graduate student, many years at Buffalo, transfers with FLJ to the Cuse. She was the heart and soul of this team. 20 points per game 2 seasons ago, 22 points per game last year. She hit 115 three-pointers last year, which is crazy for someone to do. When the relationship that Coach Jack had with Fair last year is truly special. And her absence, this is not breaking news. It's not a hot take. Mm-hmm. Syracuse is going to miss Deasia Fair.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's not a hot take. I do think when we talk about the structure of these teams, and we talked about the men's team earlier, and your leading scorer departs the leading ball handler, and you replace that person with more of a team-oriented team, more of what you described as a basketball-oriented team. For men's basketball, that's great. We love that. For this women's basketball team, it's just because Deasia was so incredibly good that when you replace it with more of a, team-oriented, move the basketball, multiple different scorers team, how do you compare with the production is the big question mark. And for me, we heard in the last press conference FLJ had after UConn, her say, Georgia Woolley's ready. This is Georgia Woolley's team. And while I do like Georgia Woolley, I just don't know. I'm
right there with you.
I really like Georgia Woolley, but if this, if she has to be the number one scorer and the number one option, I don't feel so confident. This definitely does not feel like a tournament team. But Austin, the way that this team looks, I don't think FLJ's mind is made up on.
You think this is not a tournament team?
No, I don't think this is a tournament team. But I think in FLJ's mind right now, I don't think she thinks this is a tournament team. I think she's laying the groundwork for a future tournament team down the line. They have the pieces.
Let me push back
for the
on that.
future.
Why not? Why should the expectation not be making the tournament? You were a 6 seed last year.
I think the expectation shouldn't be making the tournament because it all boils down to the fact that Deasia Fair put this team on her back and dragged them to the tournament with other very good performances and good performers on that team. Sure, Georgia Woolley is good, but is Georgia Woolley the number one option on a team in the tournament? Can we be sure of that?
I think we have two different discussions going on. I feel like this is the first time we're disagreeing in this show, which is fine.
Yeah, that is true. I don't like that. We got to make up.
Embrace it. Embrace debate.
Embrace debate.
There we go.
Exactly.
I think two things can be true. One, Deasia Fair was so by far and away the best player on last year's team, and she won some games single-handedly.
Yeah.
I think of the comeback against Florida State at home,
Yeah.
where that was a loss the whole way, and she shot the Orange back into the game and ultimately prevailed for the win. I also believe in the culture that FLJ has established.
I do agree.
And I believe that she acquires players who fit into that culture. Why not? In this era of the transfer portal, coaching matters even more than it used to. I cannot blame guys like Jay Wright and Tony Bennett for stepping aside. It's tough these days, man. It is tough.
It's a different game.
But Coach Jack has all the energy in the world.
Yeah.
She is just a fountain of youth. And why not use last year's success and instill that confidence in these new players, a lot of whom are pretty good players. And look, the loss of Alyssa Latham is also massive.
Yeah.
Massive. But you don't need, like, this team is not winning a national championship. We know that.
No.
I do believe that Georgia Woolley being the number one option, that scares me. As a fan of the team, that scares me. I don't love the sound of that. But why can't other people step up? Because at moments last year, a lot of moments last year, it was a lot of performances from unsung heroes. Elena Rice, she's no longer here. But she would step up. Kyra Wood would step up. Sanaya Wilson would step up with these big rebounding games. Why can't the culture continue?
My biggest, the culture, I think, will continue. That's not the question. It's more of a question of scoring production, and can the scoring production
You think it's a
match
math
that?
problem?
I think this is a math problem. And look, I've never been good at math. I say that a lot.
Broadcasters, we are not allowed to be good at math.
We're not. I failed math at this school before, and there's a
Whoa.
reason for that. But let me be honest with you. When I add things up, when I do the math in my head and I look at, the points per game production, not just from, a stat box score watching perspective, but also from what you see on the court, the biggest scoring added to this team is a freshman in Shy Hawkins. That is where a lot of the scoring comes from. Because Journey Thompson at Arizona State, she was fine. Angelica Velez is a pass-first point guard. So then, where's the scoring that you added? Kira Scott.
Whoa, you said
looks
Jake
good.
Carlos, pass first point guard, going to do wonders for the men's team.
But there's other much more scoring options on that team.
Okay.
There
Do
really is.
you believe in Burroughs?
I do, but I want to see it out of Burroughs. I didn't see the consistency out of Burroughs last year, which obviously, it's tough to be consistent as a freshman.
When Deasia Fair has the ball all the time.
That is true, but when her one job was basically to shoot the basketball, and there were a lot of really off games for Sophie Burroughs.
I'll give you that.
How does she fit into maybe the number 2 scoring role on this team at this point? It's either going to be her or Shy Hawkins behind Georgia Woolley. I just don't think FLJ and this team have enough scoring production to match what they had from Deasia last year. But at the same time, if there was anybody, and I mean anybody in the country, to get a team to play as a team and win team basketball in team games, it's team-oriented Felicia Leggett-Jack.
That's what I'm saying. All right, folks at home listening, feels like we got a duality of man thing going on with Hudson. He says the math doesn't math, but he says he believes in FLJ.
It's heart versus head. It's
What's
heart
going on
versus
here?
Head. That's what it is.
You guys decipher 315-443-2011. You got maybe 5 minutes to let us know.
You got to get it in now.
SportsNite. Hey, if you want your preseason take, this is your time. This is the last time we're talking before the season tips off, folks. Monday night, men's hoops. Tuesday night, Women's hoops, come on now. Get your takes out there now while they're fresh.
Because if you get them in after the season starts, then it's no longer I told you so at the end of the year.
It's just less cool.
Exactly. It's not as cool. You're not as cool.
So Shea Hawkins, this is promising stuff, right? And you saw her play live the other day.
I did.
I think that there's a lot of good stuff to go with, like the profile. I believe in her. Kira Scott, I think there's a lot of good stuff with that.
Good motor. Kira Scott, high motor player.
When you look at the motor between Scott, Wilson, and Wood, I mean, this like that. And FLJ, big thing of her last year. Our forwards and centers need to be physical. She questioned the team's physicality early in the year. By the end of the year, Hudson, they're playing with force.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the culture that they have.
So when you lose your best player, things get tougher. But it also means that you get to elevate into roles that maybe you were always destined to be. Georgia Woolley, maybe not destined to be a top scorer on an ACC team. To me, the bigger issue is not the loss of fair. It's the issue of you're playing in the ACC. Which is just
that's
brutal.
The real thing.
That's
why
just brutal.
That's why I say I don't know if Woolley is ready to step up. If Woolley steps up in, the Big Ten, then you got a really different story. You have a team that's, incredibly talented. All they'd have to do, get past Ohio State. Then you're fine. But this is the ACC. And sure, some of the teams have gotten a little bit weaker in the ACC. Like Virginia Tech is just really not going to be
right.
that
Shell
much
themselves.
Of a threat
They
this
lost
year.
their coach, the best players.
There are teams that, have a lot of moving parts to it. But you just added Stanford to your league, a team that sure has taken a little bit of a dip off, but that is still Stanford. You look around some of the other teams in the ACC, Notre Dame is going to win the national championship.
What?
I think they're going to be better than South Carolina and win the national championship. Laiatu King and Hannah Hidalgo combined, Syracuse won't be able to touch that, sadly. They just won't, not like they did last year.
Well, different. I mean, if you want to have the Notre Dame women's basketball going to win the national championship discussion, that's a no.
I think both are true. I think both are true. That's what I'm saying. I think both are true.
So
it's not just the discussion. I think
Notre Dame at 6 in the preseason poll. NC State at 9. They're always a tough team.
Yeah.
Duke at 11.
Duke is great.
UNC at 15. That was a brutal loss there at Chapel Hill last year for the Orange. Louisville at 17. Florida State at 19. FSU always has talent. They just do.
Yeah.
Louisville's historically a really good program. Like the Louisville program is something that Syracuse aspiring to be a Notre Dame. But you are building like Syracuse both men's and women's basketball projected to finish 11th in their conference of 18 teams, which is very interesting. A little bit disrespectful, I think, for both teams. I really do. Hudson, before we officially sign off the air here, give me your ceiling and your floor for both the men's team and the women's team.
Ceiling for men's, Sweet 16. Floor for men's, a 500 team.
500? 500 is bad.
I think
dude.
they could collapse, man.
Whoa. You were talking to me about how they're going to be...
It's heart versus head. I have pessimism in the back of my heart. It's deeply rooted. It's a problem in my brain. For the women's team, I think the ceiling, round of 32, getting lucky on a ceiling.
Sure.
The floor, that is truly floor of 500 team if they don't put the pieces together. So I know I gave you a bit of a nothing burger there. It's a wide array. But still, I think there's so many unknowns this year, and that's why it makes it so fun. And
so
that
much
is
fun.
Why you have to listen to WAER
Gotta have
all
some
year
hope.
long.
I'm right there. Sweet 16 is the ceiling for the men's team. I think the floor of this team is 19 wins. Ooh. I think the ceiling of the women's team, I'm right there with you, round of 32. The floor is slightly above 500. All right. Next broadcast tomorrow, noon game, Virginia Tech in the Dome. First game for Syracuse in the Dome since the Holy Cross game. That is, again, a noon kick. 11:30 we start here. Just Sikolsky and Hudson Ridley right here on the double overtime until 5 p.m. The basketball broadcast, Lemoyne, Monday, 6 p.m. we get going. The game's at 7. Luke Burgess and Shrikar Rajenjan on the double overtime until 11 p.m. This is WAER Syracuse. Skylar Wilkes, thank you to him for producing. Our engineer, Luke Burgess, and on desk, Jake Klein and Rahil Jaswal. This has been the basketball preview show. Let's go. Let's have some hope for the Orange.